Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm Rodd Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. I do miss PCH, that last scene there, producer Barbie throwing her hands up in the air. I don't necessarily miss California, but I do miss PCH. Let me put this up real quick and welcome everybody. So before we begin, listen, take a breath with me just for a moment. Long, deep breath. Welcome to Insights and Straight Talk, folks. I am Rodd Duff, your host, here with producer Barbie. This space is where we don't push complexity, where we don't flatten lived experience into labels, and where we don't talk about people, we talk with them. Today's conversation is one many people don't realize they've been waiting for, because it isn't about being broken. No, not broken. It isn't about diagnosis as an identity. And it certainly isn't about spectacle. It's about adaptation. Our guest today is Mike Cuevas. You're going to hear that name often because Mike Cuevas brings something rare to this space: calm, clarity, lived wisdom without performance. Mike is an author, a father, and a mental health advocate. He lives with dissociative identity disorder, meaning his mind learned how to survive intense experiences by separating and organizing parts of identity instead of breaking under pressure. You understand what I'm saying? That single sentence reframes everything, because instead of asking, "What's wrong?" Mike Cuevas asks, "What adapted?" And that question really matters, especially to our audience, because the great middle class is full of people who have adapted. Adapted to what, you ask? Well, to pressure, adapted to responsibility, to being the steady one in the room. Who are we talking about, right? Parents, leaders. We're talking about caregivers, professionals, people who kept going, often without the language for what they were carrying. Mike doesn't sensationalize trauma. He humorizes it. He talks about calmness as a superpower. I love that. About internal communication instead of internal conflict. About fatherhood that values regulation over control. And masculinity without the armor. And he does it in a way that invites understanding, not pity. That's why this conversation belongs right here at Insights and Straight Talk. We believe honest dialogue is a form of public service, especially when it's live and participatory. Excuse me, sorry about that. And that belief is shared by our partners who support this work. My God, we're so grateful for the Mangum City Library right here, a place that understands learning doesn't end with school, and that access to ideas and languages changes lives. Hang on just a second, folks. Sorry about that. I got something caught up there. I just had some chips, really good kettle corn. You ought to try them if you haven't. That changes lives. And we're supported by Leaf Labs. Leaf Labs is focused on how people actually learn, how they adapt and integrate knowledge in real life. And at the heart of this conversation is Voices at the Table, part of our Regeneration School project, creating intergenerational spaces where lived experience is welcomed not edited. That's the environment that Mike Cuevas belongs. This is not about fixing people, not at all. It's about understanding how people survive, parent, and lead, often quietly. Our live audience will be part of this conversation today. Your questions matter right here. Your curiosity matters here. Producer Barbie and I are honored to welcome someone who brings both courage and calm into this space. Please join me in welcoming Mike Cuevas to Insights and Straight Talk. Mike, how you doing, brother?
Very good, Rod. Thank you. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Much appreciated.
I appreciate it. I've been very much looking. Wow, we already have a comment on. Holy cow. Okay. Let me bring this up. Let me bring the comments up. Let me bring that over. And thank you for being here. I've been very interested and very excited about this conversation. 70%, as you know all this data and stuff way more than me. Wow, we already have 61 people on. Okay, these people are ready. Oh, hold on. This first one isn't a question. Did I sound drunk in that?
No.
Eldorado was. See, I told you they're harassing me now already. Did I sound drunk?
Not to me. You sounded pretty clear. Other than the coughing.
The coughing was a bit of a rough spot. Yeah, I got something still caught in my throat. I'm battling with that right now. So we were talking in the green room back there. You didn't touch any of the peanuts, right?
I did not.
Good man. Producer Barbie, you can't get mad at me today. So we were talking about a bunch of different things, and 70%, that number right in there, both adults and children. It's not just an adult thing. Suffer with live day in and day out with some type of mental, some sort of disorder. What we're talking about today is really, it's kind of a collaborative event within you. You've gone through some very traumatic stuff, and we'll get into that hopefully within your journey, your opening journey here. But it's more of a collective effort to adapt to, would you say, eight orders right now, eight personalities that are complementary to, or in some cases maybe fighting against the betterment of your day in and day out life. So tell us about the journey. What did that look like? How was that as a child, as a teenager? And I mean, is this something that shows up later in life? Give us a little bit of background, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts, except for from Eldorado here, who's harassing me right out of the gate. Go ahead, Mike, would you?
Yeah, fine. Nuts and bolts. Nuts and bolts is perfect, because that really explains what it takes to take care of what's up here, right? You need some maintenance. Something that we learned throughout our journey was that mental health is something that everyone has. Just like a heartbeat, just like lungs, everybody has mental health. Just as some of us learn how to carry it and process it a little better than others. And my journey started because I didn't and wasn't prepared to deal with what's up here. Emotionally, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't taught how to deal with my emotions, with my feelings. And part of what I discovered about DID is when there is an intense situation ahead of us, when life gets overwhelming, our nervous system...
Is often. That's
it
not
really
a
is
rarity
often.
either.
It really is, especially during these times. That our nervous systems adapt to the situation at hand because life becomes overwhelming. So it does its best to protect life. And what I didn't know was my nervous system was learning how to protect my life in those environments. So I developed personality or parts to protect me, to allow me to survive. Now, as I proceeded on my journey, I never dealt with those emotions. I never dealt with these feelings or personalities. And an easy way to put it for me to understand was I copied and pasted my original document, and I never went back to the original document to deal with what was in the original document. So I've been living a life of copying, pasting, copying, pasting, copying, pasting. And I had so much emotional trauma that I never went back to deal with. That once I did, that's when my journey truly began, is allowing myself to stay in the moment rather than run away from it.
So let me ask you this, Mike. So we just got a little bit of some background there on a visual. Thank you very much. That makes a lot of sense. And as I said back in the green room, just a little bit more color between the layers here. So you're in your, I don't know, 40s now, 30s, 40s.
42.
Right? So 42. Okay. So you're 42, and this disorder, let's call it that, just because it's part of the name, right? Does it show up? Did it show up late? I mean, how did you transition? Transition's a good word here, I think. How did you transition when you said, hold on a second, there's something a little bit different than what I'm thinking it should be here? Why am I switching here? You know, when did you start to learn you needed to learn something about this? How long did you go in your life? And does it show up early on? It comes from or childhood issues, right? That your mind was smart enough to be able to recategorize and compartmentalize. Let's call. I use, because I went through something similar. Compartmentalize things so that your mind could protect your body. That's its job. That's what its job is, and it's doing its job. How is that something that can show up early on? Is it later in life? Does it depend on the situation? Pull in some more color in those layers, would you, Mike?
Definitely. I would love to put it in layers, because that's what it takes, honestly, is layers. Yeah. Because juvenile to a young adulthood to currently right now, there are layers to get there. In my juveniles, I was misdiagnosed growing up in the 90s. You know, mental health wasn't really on everybody's radar.
No.
It really was more like, it's in your head, let's eliminate it, let's move on. And in the culture that I grew up in, the Latino culture, is really of a machismo culture. It's really a manhood culture. Is valianthood. Yeah, exactly. You don't talk about your feelings. You don't talk about your emotions. You bury them down inside. You get your ass to work. And excuse my language. You go back to work.
No. Fuck yeah. You're fucking fine.
You do what you need to do to provide for your family, period. And so we grew up in that. So there was a lot of shame and guilt into speaking up about emotions, speaking up about my feelings. So I had to suppress that. And that's where the compartmentalizing started, was that shame and that guilt. And the more we grew up, and especially during our adulthood, young adulthood, we had to deal with addiction. We had to deal with having to deal with those parts, because the more we shoved our parts down, the more we silenced them. Because I'm be true, I'm just one honest statement that I had to come to terms with when we had to deal with what we had to deal with. And that fact was, silence feels safer than speaking the truth.
Really?
And when we sat with that, we understood that silence is really a hindrance. Silence was isolating us from our issues. Silence was making us worse. We were allowing silence to build the stigma that DID is this chaos and this creature and this dangerous, when it's really not. It's our nervous system adapting to our survival to protect us. So we had.
So at this point, just to interject a little bit more and continue on with your thought, but I wanted to bring in, we were talking about can you also interject when you're doing this? You're allowing the other aspects to listen in, and is that to join in the conversation or just to fully understand throughout the 8 different variants? Can you get into that explanation a bit?
Definitely. Well, the eight different variants are alters. Um,
Click it.
now we've done enough work with ourselves, with our nervous system, to understand we are allowed and we give ourselves empathy to one another, because before there was a lot of fighting. You talked in your monologue.
Internally.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because we hadn't done the work. We were still dealing with the copy and paste of everything. So those parts of us were fighting us. I wasn't aware. I was still going around like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? When I should have been asking, what happened to me? And when I asked myself that, and I gave myself permission to ask myself that, we really did allow ourselves to accept what we had. And when we accepted what we had, one of the first things that we do is we try to get all the pieces on the chessboard to see what things are at, so we know how to game plan. So when we found out that we are a system, that there's different parts and alters of us that we haven't been given a voice to, that we haven't been paying attention to, one of the first things I did was I opened up my laptop and I wrote out a series of questions of what I wanted to hear from my parts. What were they trying to tell me? And every day I would come and I would have my personal therapy sessions where I would come and lock myself in my room. I will ask one question and I will allow my alters to come forward. Now, this is something they tell you not to do, which is speed up your healing, speed up your process. And this is why I advocate now that safety comes before understanding. Because what I did when rushing those experiences, my nervous system wasn't prepared. So a lot of memories, a lot of trauma came rolling in like a damn freight train. And my body wasn't prepared. So my body has paid the consequences, because now I got like these face twitches and my body, but I'm okay with that. That's a price I'm willing to pay to have that life that I have now. Because
so how old were you when you started asking those questions, and you without help at that point, you were on your own and you made this decision, I'm going to start asking everybody, all the other, is it 7 additional or 8 additional instances? 8, right? Total of 9, the main
alters.
I'm not using. Yes, alters. I'm sorry, I said instances.
No. No worries. We understood what you meant.
Is it 8 additional?
Yeah, we have 8 alters among us. I'm very cautious about sharing their names. Some of them do have names, because there was a point where we grew up wanting to be Tim the Two-Man Taylor. We wanted that as our father figure, because we didn't have that. So it was very important to us, to me, to be that father growing up to my boys. I got 2 beautiful young men, 11 and 5.
How old? 11 and 5. Okay. Oh, that's a great age.
Oh, it's a beautiful age. When I started my therapy, they were 9 and 3. So it's been a 2-year journey so far. So Tim the Two-Man Taylor, I wanted to be him growing up. So when I saw, at the time he was 8 and 9, look at me with numbness, and I looked into his eye. I couldn't take it. There was a part of me that was wondering why our son was looking like this, right? Because we were doing what we thought was manhood, which is go to work, come home, you pay the bills, you watch football, and you get up and do it the next day. That's how we were living, not knowing that we were actually dissociating when we got home. we were neglecting our boys. We weren't really giving them the proper attention. So when one of the first things that we did was when we had issues with therapy. We had a big traumatizing event with therapy when we were juveniles that made it really hard for us to approach therapy again. But we
Really?
went, yeah, it really was.
So you had an instance in original therapy that made it hard to go back. That must have been traumatic. That's like, okay, I've got a life. Am I right here, or am I misjudging this, or explaining this? You're going. You have a relief. I remember that moment where producer Barbie walked me through some things and was able to get me to professional help. And although that didn't work out, it was such a relief. What was that moment for you? So it was that traumatic that was like, okay, this isn't the exit strat. This isn't the help that I was promised. Is that what you're saying there?
Like I said, the first
very first one
was when I was a juvenile, and in the 90s, they weren't prepared for mental health.
Oh, that's true.
So,
yeah.
So I grew up decades. I learned how to compartmentalize. I developed tools, and I became really great at putting on a mask in a crowded room. And I don't know if that makes sense to anybody.
It makes perfect sense, dude.
But,
perfect sense. We use that term, mask. You're hiding behind a mask, right?
And we compartmentalize so well that sometimes we don't know which mask we're actually putting on in the environment that we're in. And that's what our nervous system is. And that's what DID is to us. And I keep saying to us because DID is different with everyone who actually has DID. We have this
different for everybody. It's
really
different for every. I mean, there's different associates or people, personalities, but the actual order is different for each person.
We experience our symptoms differently because we get it for different reasons. One thing that I discovered was 90% of the people that have DID have it before the age of 6. Now think about that. Before we're in the first grade, we're already copying and pasting our minds because we don't know how to deal with the environment around us.
Wow.
So that is like, man, we had to do a lot of work. And one of the shifts that happened for our healing came from listening to our son. Because like I was going back to that question with therapy, having to go back, I asked myself why. Because I knew it was we were gonna be re-traumatizing because we still didn't feel that safety of being in a therapy room. And as a matter of fact, even when we did get into a therapy room, it took months before we actually came out and told our therapist what's really going inside our head, because we still had this fear. We had a fear of shame and guilt. If we actually admit that the voices in my head, if we actually admit that we're putting a mask on, they're going to institutionalize us. They're going to take me away from the very reason that I'm getting my work done, which is to protect and love my boys. Why am I really going to share what's going on inside of here? So it really took, and
Good
to be honest, Rodd, it took a boxing coach to get me to overcome that fear, believe it or not. Because,
really?
Yeah, because it got to a point where I had to sit down with my son and I asked him, all right, Pop, what is it like for me to be your father? What is it like to actually live with me, homie? And that to hear my son say the things that he was saying, I wasn't Tim, the two-man Taylor. Man, that was heartbreaking, man. Because think about all the work that we do, sweat, blood, everything that we do for work to get a paycheck, and to think that, okay, they don't have to be grateful. They don't even have to appreciate. They just have to be kids. And we're at the stage where we allow them to be kids, but at that time, I'm like, man, you're ungrateful little shit, to be honest. But like I said, we have parts and alters. And the one common thread among all of us is the love that we have for our boys. And so that night we dissociated, we fragmented, we had to make a choice whether we actually had to work for ourselves, work within ourselves and stop abandoning ourselves, or create a life of chaos for our boys. So I walked away. I had to walk away from our partner. I had to walk away from my boys because I knew I wasn't doing them any good in the state that I was in. And that was a hard day, Rod. So I suffer from, so that's another thing that we suffer from is PTSD. So our body was really convulsing and shaking. I couldn't get a sentence out because my stuttering was really severe and hard. And I had gone to other gyms to try to get like MMA gyms, and it's almost like they saw the movie American Sniper and kept turning me away. They're like, "No, we don't want you here. We don't need that in this gym." And I kept walking, and finally there was this boxing gym, and I opened the door, and I wasn't looking for a fight. And man, I wasn't looking to. I was just looking to be seen for a moment. And that coach, he didn't turn me away. He didn't ask about my past. He just saw me and told me to climb up on that ring. Can you climb up on that ring? I'm like, I could climb up on that ring, coach. I climbed up on that ring, Rod, and he gave me 5 minutes. That's all it took. 5 minutes of presence. 5 minutes of grounding my nervous system. And in those 5 minutes, I felt safe. He put his hand on my shoulder and he pointed at that door that I walked through and he said, Mike, the man walking out that door is stronger than the man that walked in. Not because he changed, but because he stayed.
That's the key, isn't it? That's the whole key right there, is staying and going through it and walking through it and adapting, not running, not being fearful. And it's beautiful that God brought you to a coach, because at that point, more than a psychologist or somebody that works in that field, coaches work in the same field, but they have a different goal, right? They have a different approach. They have a different knowledge of what's driving a man in this case to better himself in what he's doing. In this case, it wasn't necessarily to beat your opponent in the boxing ring, but through those lessons, beat your opponent that's right here dealing with you every day. And that's why Nick's question is awesome. Nick Anton, check this out. He's asking, how did receiving a diagnosis change the way you understood yourself day to day? That's got to be huge. That moment that Nick's asking about right there, that moment, that had to be, I know for me it was, so I'm just saying lived experience. How was it for you? Day to day, how you live in your life since you've got that diagnosis that said, oh, okay, I can start, I see my opponent now. A little melodramatic there, but you know.
No, this is perfect. Actually, you visualize your opponent, because that's what it allowed me to do. Is before I had my diagnosis, I was moving around pieces on the chessboard without knowing where the pieces were at. You know, once we got our diagnosis. First of all, true story. When our therapist told us, okay, we think you're a system, we think you have DID.
By the way, we have 400, by the way, just cut in here a second. We have over 400 people on right now. So good job, man. Good episode. You are reaching some people here on this subject that we a lot deal.
I'm glad. I appreciate it, honestly. It lets us feel more human, because we are, right? Adapting to our environment, adapting to the circumstances in front of us is human. But going back to that diagnosis, when we were told had DID, the first question we asked was, "The fuck is DID?" Well, part of the shame and part of the guilt of understanding and knowing what we had was we were still recognizing it as the old name, which is multiple personality disorder. Somehow growing up, we've always knew we had that. We just couldn't confirm it. There was no way of confirming that.
Yeah.
And once we did get confirmation that, okay, you really do have this, there really is something going inside your mind. What it did for me and our mind was it allowed me to visualize the mountain that I had to climb. I love walking, I love hiking. And the reason for that is there's only one way you're going to get to the top of that fucking mountain, and it's one step at a time. And that's what, and walking away out of that boxing gym, and I still go to Coach Mark today. He still teaches me lessons every day, even when I don't want him. But he does tap into our parts and alters, because there is this protector, this fighter in me that I was fighting against for a long time. I thought that the one that was fighting was my dark entity. I felt that, nah, motherfucker, you're trying to get me to do some wrong things, bro. I'm not going to listen to you. And that, more than me, I was walking around with that all day. And people will see me talking to myself and actually like, man, that boy there's something wrong with that boy. To now, I got my diagnosis. We did what Coach told us to do, which was stay in the moment and deal with that original document. And it was hard, man. It was hard because our body felt it first before understanding what happened to us. Like I said, my body started convulsing. My hands started shaking because something that I didn't know at that time was that the body stores the traumatic event. The mind doesn't. The mind tells you how to survive. The mind tells you how to keep moving forward. The mind gives us rocky blood. It doesn't matter how hard life hits, you keep getting up and you keep moving forward, right? That's what the idea is. But we never dealt with those emotions. We were never taught how to feel safe in our own nervous system.
So let me ask. I'm sorry, just to build on that and bringing David in here, because it's what you're talking about right now. What helped you first recognize dissociation as adaptation, not as weakness? That's kind of where you're going towards and what you're talking about. So I just wanted to drop this on top of when you finish what you're saying now, you're rolling straight into this, if you would, please.
Sure. I lost my train of thought, but I can go straight to this question, though.
Sorry about that, man.
No worries, man. That's why I love this back and forth, because I actually get to answer questions that's on people's minds, right? Dissociation as adaptation. The realization honestly came after understanding what I had, because for one, I've been doing this for a long time. Even my partner knows, because when I've been with my partner for 12 years now, and there was chaos in between and everything. And something that we've always done is talk to ourselves. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'll go like this. I'm like, I'm talking to myself. So she knows that the conversation I'm having has nothing to do with her. That's one red flag I should have known. The second major flag that I should have known, that look back at it now, I'm like, that's a strong signal of adaptation. And that was when I was having a panic attack. I was having a panic attack inside of my car. I was holding on to the steering wheel like dear life. I was holding on to the steering wheel like my life depended on it. I did not want to get inside that car. And in that moment, that car became my world. And I was just so frank and I was just so in that tune and locked into that moment that there was something inside of me. And there was a part of me that knew I was stuck. And I knew I had to get out of that parking lot. So it turned on some Linkin Park. And the moment I started hearing Chester start singing and I tapped into our protector, our guidance. I had enough strength to move out of there. That was a matter of what, 30 seconds, but I should have known that me being in a panic attack and that immediate switch to the protector, that was my nervous system's adapting. That should have been a big red flag. That was me dissociating, and that was my nervous system switching into protection mode and adapting to the surviving. That's when life became overwhelming.
Is this allowing you now, as you're working through for the last 2 years now? You've been working through this and going through and now helping others in the same thing. We were talking back in the green room. You talk to a lot of people in this community and help them because they haven't necessarily matured through the process as far as you have. So it's a very interesting journey that you're on, a difficult one. It's easy for me to say interesting, but it's a very difficult and interesting journey because it's not just about this disorder, because there's a lot of additional things that we deal with. You talk about the mask, hiding behind a mask. You talk about compartmentalizing. These are all variations off of the same mental disorders that we deal with, because we're living in a society that's far beyond what we should be living in it with. If you know what I mean there. Society is kind of gotten a little twisted, and it makes it, especially for guys over the last couple of decades, it's really been a shift. The 50s, guys could do no wrong, and whatever they did didn't matter, right? And that pendulum's, unfortunately, it doesn't center itself. It goes all the way to the other side. And for the last 20 years, we've been nothing but evil and masculine. We're bad about everything we do. And on top of that, if we have issues, we can't talk about them like you opened up with. It's so true. That's starting to change a little bit more because of conversations like this and people like you. Let me ask you, though, Damon's got a great question here. How can parents explain DID to children in a healthy way? Part of what we do here in this show, in the Regeneration School projects, it's about adding a fifth core subject: math, English, science, history, and then, well, let's call it life as a placeholder. It basically does everything that school doesn't do, right? And part of that is dealing with mental issues. It starts as children. But how do you explain, how does this go as far as you've talked to your boys? You've already hinted at some of these conversations. How do parents, so somebody looks like Damien is dealing with something in this arena, I'm just guessing. How do parents explain DID to children in a healthy way? Damien's probably going through what you went through 2, 3, 4 years ago, where he finally asked his kid, "Hey, what's it like living with pops? What's it like living with your hombre? Your father?" And that was a hard conversation to hear, wasn't it? How do you help people go through that time period that you went through?
The best way, I guess the healthiest way, is to normalize it. That is not something to be shameful about. It really is nothing to be shameful about or guilty about. It's our nervous system adapting.
It's actually a superpower. You actually used the word superpower along the way. I stole it and used it in the monologue. But you're right. I mean, this is something that your brain has done to protect your systems because of your past. Other people couldn't handle it, or handle it in different ways. Their brain does. The chemicals that go out, like you said, it's the body, the cells that are affected. The brain, all it does is send chemicals out. Once it knows something, the heart, the brain of the heart, the brain of the gut instinct, those things, the brain of the head, all it's there to do is just fight or flight, or you know what I mean? It's the chemicals that go out to have your body do whatever it is. Once that goes out, now it's your cells that are affecting it, right?
Right. And that understanding alone has helped me become a better parent, because so after I did get diagnosed with DID, the first person I told was my partner, right?
Yep.
At that time, At that time, we weren't living together. I was homeless. But it was imperative, like, look, I'm getting help for myself. I got diagnosed. This is what I have. I'm working on myself so I could come back into the home and be with my boys. The first conversation I had with my son about what I had was I had to do internal work. I had to not be shameful about what I had. I actually became proud that my system protected me because I acknowledged that my system protected me because I was worth protecting in the first place.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
Once I was able to hold compassion and empathy for myself, it really is a superpower. My parts, I got two parts in particular that are young ones. One is almost damn near 40 years old. So he's the rawness of us. He is the one that didn't know emotion. He didn't, and he was, to be honest, he was what I thought was the dark one in all of us. Primal, raw, protective. And when I figured out that he was actually the oldest one of us, I'm like, man, you're just a baby. You developed because there was no love in your world. If you know what, let me give that love to you now that we didn't have at that time. And now that I'm able to show empathy and love towards myself to that part of us, we see that superpower of, damn, dude, my mind switched into quote unquote venom to protect me when I was 2 years old, to protect me from that trauma event that happened. I shouldn't be ashamed of venom. I shouldn't be ashamed of this superhero. And when I told my son, Pop, I got 6 superheroes that protect me, because at that time I thought I only had 6 alters when we first discovered we were a system. And I'm like, I got 6 superheroes that protect me, man. I got 6 superheroes that walk around me like a football team. I'm the quarterback, they're my linemen, bro. Like, I'm good to go. And guess what, homie? Now that I know I got these superheroes protecting me, man, I can be a superhero for you too. What do you need? And I give Rodd, we cried. There's been 2 or 3 intense conversations since then. Because I signed my son up for peer support group 2 through NAMI. NAMI is a nonprofit organization in every state. It's free therapeutic help for anybody who's battling with mental illness.
What's NAMI stand for? What's that acronym stand for? NAMI.
National Alliance of Mental Illness.
Gotcha.
And
every state has
every state.
I'm in Oklahoma, so I can reach out to an Oklahoma department and start to locate that assistance.
Yes, definitely. And they have Zoom peer support groups. So it doesn't matter where you are. It's free. It's fucking free. You can't beat free. And there shouldn't be no shame, no guilt, because there is a relief of hearing somebody else going through what you're dealing with too. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of shame and guilt, and sometimes you don't want to share the voices in your head, right? So hearing somebody else says, "Oh man, I got voices too," it really helps. It lets me feel, man, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah, and that's for me. I don't know. You had mentioned about dependency as well. You know, we self-medicate when things happen. And stuff happens out of self-medication. That's not necessarily always the best tool for us to use. But when that happens, let me ask you this. This is a great question, and you're in this area right now, so it's a perfect time that his question came up, which from David here. What does internal communication actually look like in daily life? You're talking about this happening. So put us in your life, in your world. What does that look like? Because I can sense it, right? You know, I can sense that there's a conversation going on. But what does that look like for us that have other issues that haven't necessarily dealt with this? Or better yet, there's somebody out here, probably David, somebody that says, okay, there's something going on that I don't recognize or feel necessarily comfortable with at this point. Haven't had any diagnosis, but there's something going on. So David's probably, I'm guessing, what does that internal communication look like? Because he may be having something like that. Give us a picture. Give us a video of what that may look like.
Video or image of what internal communication looks like. I guess.
Yeah. What's happening when you're having that? What does that look like? What would I be feeling?
To be honest, Rod, when we first started to do these interviews, and we came across that question before, and I got really stuck because in therapy, we do this system called IFS, which is internal family system. And to put it in plain words, basically is like that movie Inside Out, where the kid movie, where you have this command center and you have all these personalities and feelings, and you got it. It's kind of like that for us. Like I said, for us, every DID system is different, but for us, it's kind of is like that because there is, even with you now, I have a conversation with you right now, and I could feel my protector. I could feel my my person just allocating, just making sure that everything's all right. I could feel my little one being all right, just having a good time, and happy that we're all here, and we're happy that we can also hold space for one another. Is having that command center be really lively, and that calm that I was talking about allows me to hear each voice to what it actually meant. Because to be honest,
Are they communicating between the 8?
Well, here's the thing: the communication.
You said they all listen, right? You said they all listen.
They all listen.
Right now, you're allowing them to hear what you're saying, right? That's that signal. Now, they're each individually hearing that, and then is that coming together as a more group decision in how to address this situation or another? Is that part of what we're looking at as the picture? Is that, or is it individual? It's complex as hell. How complex is it? Right?
Yes, it's definitely complex. Communicating is not always the voices. Sometimes what I had to learn is that one of my alters, and this is the one I was talking about, went from 6 to 8, is that he's a mute. So when I try to communicate with him, what I really felt was a change in my emotions and the weight of how everything felt. How memories will come without voices. So I would have to relive memories, but with the emotion. And that's how he will communicate with me, to where sometimes where he's hosting or he's fronting, I could hear myself yelling, yo, say this right now. This would be a perfect thing to say right now. Open your mouth. But when he's hosting, I'm just numb. I'm just on autopilot, and I'm just going about my day. And I usually don't snap out of it until the committee. And that's what we call ourselves, by the way. My system, we are Mike in the committee, because that is how we come to a conclusion. It's like, what's the best mask? What's the best superhero to present at this situation right now, so we can walk with empathy? Because something that we struggle with early on in this is that I wasn't giving them a voice. I wasn't acknowledging them. So at nighttime, these motherfuckers just, why don't we didn't say this? Why did we feel this? Why couldn't we try that? Why couldn't we? So we had to relive that all night, not knowing that parts of us had their own emotions, had their own feelings, had their own way of handling that situation at hand. So now on a daily basis, when we wake up, we are a walking mental exercise. We really wake up, have to do these mental exercises, because we don't know who's fronting. We don't always know who's hosting. We wake up and okay. And I was tired. I was really tired of that. I had to start imagining my day, walking into my day with clarity, with certainty, and ready for whatever might come. And doing that, I had to prepare myself. So we wake up doing mental exercises. when there's a triggering event that occurs, because you never heal. I want to put it out there. I don't care if anybody slaps me in the face. You never heal, because as soon as you think you heal, there's something else that's going to happen that you're going to have to deal with, period. So for us, it's like, how are we going to deal with that next triggering event? How are we going to deal with it? Because we're not going to allow ourselves to go to old patterns anymore. And part of that is, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so what you're talking about now, you're never going to heal from this. You want to, obviously, because it's definitely, I mean, you're in a better place now than you were several years ago, because you're managing, you're adapting, you're recognizing, you're giving voice to. In the mornings, you go through a process just to know who's up front in the stage. What are you going into your morning with? And then as a trigger situation happens, you have to take some inventory, not just of one feeling, but of this committee of feelings. How can, and this I think is perfect. It's absolutely perfect, because you don't live your life just at home. You said yourself, you have to still be a provider, right? That's our mission. That's our role as a man, as a person within the family. Typically, not always, but let's just go typically. And please, if there's any extremists out there, don't harass me about being sexist or something. But as a man, typically, that's our role, right? So you still have to go through this, deal with this, and provide. Lovely question from Olivia, I believe here. How can leaders create safer environments for people with hidden trauma? So at some point, somebody has to find out about it. Obviously, if you have a leader, somebody you work with, you're going to open up to them and say, look, if something is happening, I may be doing this. I assume you have those conversations. Maybe you don't. But how would you recommend somebody who leads a team that has somebody that they've recognized, hey, there's some trauma that comes up every now and then. How would you recommend that leader address that?
That's a very good question. And I'm going to slow this down.
I think it is.
Because I want to slow it down just because it really is important, because a lot of us hold on to that shame and guilt and stay silent because sometimes employers are not prepared, right? And we actually had to deal with this situation not that long ago. So my advice for any leader wanting to create a safer environment is understand and realize that quick reactions or sudden shifts in emotional change is our nervous system adapting to our environment. So sometimes our reactions are not really our own. So if you see someone, okay, that was a little much right there, be able to hold space and ask, okay, what happened to cause this person to react in that way? How can I hold some safe space for them? And when I talk about creating safe space, there really is a TED Talk YouTube video that I share, and I'll put it on our private chat link. So if anybody wants to come, what's that video about?
I'll get it over there.
It's a short 3-minute video, and it really explains the difference between sympathy and empathy. Knowing that subtle difference makes a complete 180-degree change, not only in how you relate to others, but how you relate to yourself.
Sorry about that. I was just moving that subject over. We're staying on the same topic here, okay? Like I like to say, hover.
Right, you have to give me 1 second. My 5-year-old is knocking. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry.
All right. Hey, introduce your 5-year-old if you want.
Johnny, what's wrong?
By the way, while we're waiting, folks, this is his Gmail account there. So check him out on Gmail for contact. Email him directly, or you can go onto his YouTube channel, Health with Courage. I've seen a number of videos, and some of them are just sound. Very, very, very informative. Some of the research I did was looking through that, and I thought it really gave us some good information Mental health is such an important topic that we all struggle with. Literally, that's a real number. 70% of kids, people, humans, adults and kids, 70% deal day in and day out with some sort of mental health issues. So it's really important. Looks like we took care of the little one issue there. Oh, look at you. What's your name, handsome young man?
Johnny Wolf.
Johnny?
Johnny Wolf.
Johnny Wolf.
Yeah.
You know what? You're 5. You're a big old boy.
Yeah.
You look like you got a little attitude on you too. You look like you got a
He's a wolf, all right. Come here.
He's got a little sassy in him, doesn't he? He's got a little smirk there. I saw that.
All right, Papa, go to your room. Close the door, please.
Tell him to watch himself. Tell him to watch himself on the 5 o'clock news tonight. So I got the right information here. We're not done yet, but I wanted to get that out since we were doing a couple of things there, taking care of business. I did want to move on though, in that what helped first recognize dissociation. Okay, we already did that one. I'm looking for one that led up. It's this one here. How can people better listen to loved ones with trauma history? So now now looks like Michelle may be dealing with somebody, or not dealing, has a partner who's they need to communicate a little bit better with, because so we've talked about how to make a work environment, better and more open. What's the right play? What's the right direction? Advice to leaders, advice to parents talking to their children about it. And Michelle here, I'm assuming, has a partner. How can people listen better to loved ones? Or maybe it's not a partner, maybe it's a sister or a mom or something. My mom had a similar situation. She was got some help, later on in life with trauma history. So how does a partner or loved one listen better? What do you have your partners? You've had 2 that we've talked about within this time here. Obviously you're not with the original, and you went through learning yourself about that. That must have been a very tough and difficult time for everybody involved. And then your second partner here sounds like you're more informed, so you're able to help her through. I'm only saying her because I heard you say her, so I'm not making it. You got to be careful in today's.
Yeah, I know. That's right. I know.
Everybody's so fucking weird. So anyway, answer Michelle. I think this is a great piece of advice here for something you've recently gone through in the last 2 years with your partner.
I smile when you said 2 partners, because it is 2 partners, but she's still the same person. There's a before and after. Really? Yeah, it's 12 years with the same partner. There was I did live in between, and that's because there's chaos. I stopped abandoning myself. And I think that's the most important thing when dealing with loved ones, is that we don't abandon ourselves to try to rescue them. We don't try to fix them. We don't try to repair them. Dealing with my diagnosis is actually allowed me to be a better partner for her too, because something that we didn't know we were dealing with at the time is not only was I not diagnosed, but she wasn't diagnosed either. She suffers from PMDD. And for those who don't know what that is, it's severe PMS. It's severe PMS. So you could just imagine how her would just trigger us. And something that I realized about RDID is the more we stay quiet, the more we silence those voices, the more they get louder, and the worse my symptoms get. So of course she was triggering, right? She would pour fuel on my fire and rah! So walking away really was the best thing. Working on myself, learning empathy was key. And I can't wait to put that video on our private chat to share with everybody, because that video became our way of life, providing the safe space not only for our partner, for people at work, even for people as we go about our daily day, we understand that people's reactions are not really their own. That is their nervous systems adapting to their environment. And if we can hold empathy for ourselves, then we have the ability to show empathy for others. And that makes us, that's why we try to walk while calm, because if we're calm, we can control our state. We're not living in reaction. I like living on command. So just yesterday, I took my boys to get a Slurpee at 7-Eleven. There was an incident where the cashier and the customer were yelling at each other. They were going at each other's throats. And my 10-year-old, 11, I could see that he would start to get frantic. I'm like, Pop, lock in my eyes, man. Breathe. We're calm. We're protected. We're good. That doesn't concern you, homie. Stay in this, stay in my world. My fighter didn't give a shit. You met him. He does have a little wolf in him where he's like, all right, let me see what's going on. But at that time, I was able to hold space in real time for my boys. And this was yesterday. This wasn't like 5 years down the line. This is my work working in real time. And that's what matters to me. It's not being at the top of the mountain. It's about taking the necessary steps to get there. Once you start taking those necessary steps, your confidence starts to grow. Your empathy starts to expand. Your awareness becomes to where we have this acronym that we walk around with called BAR, B-A-R. Basically, when a triggering event starts to happen, we become aware of a triggering event is coming. We pause and we take a deep breath. That's what B stands for, breath. And then the A, we acknowledge which part of ourselves is getting triggered, because we understand, all right, not all of us are acting the same way. Not all of us are going to be upset at this situation. So once we acknowledge which parts of us are getting activated, we can take another deep breath and we reframe the situation. I understand you're triggered, but we're safe right now. We're in control right now of whatever outcomes are. So before we jump into conclusions, let's stop and understand what's going on. That has completely helped everything.
I'm guessing that what you just described, correct me if I'm wrong, Kenneth here, how do you handle moments when society expects you to hold it together? Right there, you just yesterday had a situation. Two people are screaming at each other. You're there with your boys. You're 12. I think you said the older one, the 11-year-old was starting to get a little bit frantic. You, and probably you, were feeling that as well. That's part of the thing. Society at that point expects you to hold it together, take care of your boy. How to fill that out for me, would you? How do you handle moments when society expects you to hold it together? This question came in right as you were making that comment. I'm guessing that they're related.
Society, I had to come to terms with understanding that society wasn't built with the nervous system in mind. Once I realized that, okay, the nervous system is not attitude. It's a lot of self-work. I understand that adapting. So what adapting superpower that I need to tap into to hold space for whatever situations I have, what society has in hand. And part of that is understanding what we can and cannot control. Let go of that what we can't and hold space for what we can't. Because when we start to feel overwhelmed, then we are not good for those we love, and we're not being Tim the Two-Man Taylor for our boys.
That's true, man. That is so true. I think Dixon kind of is digging a little deeper here. We've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but for Dixon here, would you add to this? What would healthy support look like instead of trying to fix somebody? I think too often, like your partner, maybe in the first round, hey, and women and men have a tendency to do this. They want to fix you, or fix a problem, or make something go away. instead of staying back and listening. But what would healthy support look like instead of trying to fix somebody?
We're guilty of this too, right? Because when we started working on ourselves, we came back. You got PTSD. I can cure you. But not,
Yeah.
And honestly, I completely forgot my boxing story. I completely forgot what coach did for me. So as I start to advocate and I start to go to support groups and start to reach out to people, I understand that what coach did for me, he didn't try to fix me. He didn't try to repair me. He just sat with me. He allowed presence. Remember, the man
said that a couple times. You've said that word a couple times, presence, several times during today's discussion, haven't you? Presence matters.
Presence matters more than what do I have to say in that moment? What can I ask? Sometimes, and this the YouTube video makes complete sense. You just have to allow someone to share, thank them for sharing, and just be there. Sometimes in isolation, we feel so alone that when people do come in, you're like, yeah, but you have this. Yeah, but you also have this. I'm like, why can't it's okay to sit with things, to let things settle for a while, to let your body feel safe with what just happened. And only then we have to be allowed things to settle can there be some clarity. And that's what I do with my partner now, man, is she still has PMDD. That shit not going away. But we have empathy for her. We realize that her nervous system was adapting to whatever she grew up with, whatever trauma she had growing up. So we understand that her reactions are not really hers. There's her nervous systems. And when we allow emotions and feelings to settle and they're allowed to feel safe, then we can communicate better and understand, okay, what is it about that event that triggered you so we can reframe and move forward better. Dude, we don't have a fucking perfect relationship, but it is something that we're trying to get to that mountain together. And that's the difference now, is that before it was my mountain to climb and I wasn't taking along with me. Now we both have this mountain. Okay, you got this, I got this. Hold my hand. All right, we're gonna stumble, we might fall, but we're getting up that fucking mountain together. Why? Because we have two beautiful boys that we love, care about, and we want a better future for. And Rodd, during this journey, I did come across, I don't know for the life of me where the fuck I got it, but I'm thankful that I got it. When you decide to heal and when you decide to stay with yourself and work on yourself, you don't just heal yourself. You heal 7 generations ahead of you.
Wow.
Why can I not give that to my boys?
Ho. Say that again, dude. That was dynamic. And on the show, when you talk about it wasn't perfect, that we should never be looking for perfection, but it's that journey. Say again what you just said about 7 generations. Click it.
When you decide to heal, you don't just heal yourself. You heal 7 generations ahead of you. That means not only do my boys get to carry how to deal with emotions, how to deal with their feelings, but they too, in turn, can be better partners, better advocate, better friends for their friend, and continue on for my grandkids are gonna be able to do that, man. Yeah. Why? Because I decided to stay in that fucking ring and deal with my original document. And it's hard. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is hard fucking work. Your body's gonna go through and changes. Like I said, I paid the cost for introducing these guys too fast because my face has a permanent twitch. So when I don't do my mental exercises, you'll hear Johnny from across the room, "Dad, your face is glitching again." And it's cool. It allows me to smile, and I'm like, all right, what's going on right now that we need to take a deep breath and calm down to be able to move forward.
That's beautiful, man. I think we're going to redress similar another question here from Jennifer that I think is kind of interested in this. How can calm leadership influence team dynamics under pressure? So that sounds out of place to me in this discussion a little bit, but I'm gonna alter it a little bit in that when you have a team dynamic, you're at work, whatever you do, whether you're in working in the construction, working in accounting, working in an office, whatever it is, whatever you do, there's always a team. Very rarely are you ever working by yourself. But in all situations, there's some pressure that comes up here and there. And leadership manages that team or that flow. You need vision and you need the backbone, right? And those two things need to work together. And sometimes when the dynamics come up, you may have additional pressure and then have additional you need to address, because pressure with a team and then with a team that also is dealing with issues, that's part of that team concept now, that dynamic, that's a better word, team dynamic now. How does a leader, recognizing that situation, knowing some pressure is going to come up, how do they create that calm as a suggestion? Is it an open up front conversation out of the gate? Is it addressing things as they go? What's that look like?
Calm under pressure is not something that I guess can be given. It's something that
True.
you actually have to work at. So
Yes.
if you're trying to create that environment, you have to start within yourself. Because if you can't have calm under pressure yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to have calm for other people, because you're going to succumb to their pressures. Something that I understood was that everyone in this world is walking around with pressures and stress of the things they don't always talk about. Like I said, it's the silence, because silence becomes safer, right?
Yeah, it does.
Once we actually can prepare, that's when we can remove the chaos before it actually begins, right? And something I've been a leader in a group, and so one thing that helped me was I started to look in advance. Okay, what situations can arise? I started to prepare. Like I said, if I got a chessboard in front of me, I gotta have those game pieces and things to look ahead. So if you're a leader and you're not looking ahead, that's a red flag for me there. Having empathy is a big key. Creating a safe space. If you have a team dynamic and they're not able to bounce off criticism off of you because they feel shame or they feel guilt that their silence is now, safer, then you're not really helping yourself or your team. Having compassion for yourself allows you to have compassion for others, allows you to have understanding for others. You really want to move. Go ahead.
I'm pulling out of this that through your work, you're actually more of a compassionate leader, father, partner, than you would have been, than you probably were earlier in your life. Not just because you've recognized the disorder, let's call it, but because in your adaptation and what the work you've done, you've learned about being a more compassionate person, which makes you more compassionate in all of these things. So while pressure comes up, yeah, you twisted that, Jennifer, what I looked at, but I think you actually answered what she was questioning. If you're a leader, when you're a leader and pressure comes up, that compassion kicks in now for you, instead of what in the past it may have been dealt with differently.
And I go back to calm as a superpower, because when our work, the body knows first, because knowing and understanding that the body is holding on to that trauma, now I understand when triggering happens, my body would tell me first, okay, there's like yesterday at the 7-Eleven, my body told me first, all right, kick into calmness. So calm became a superpower to, okay, slow things down in the moment. To, okay, if that team member, I can see that team member getting frustrated, for instance, I'm just going to take it back to old school drive-through. You got cars out the window. You're worried about your drive-through time. You got that kid just wondering what's going on. Man, walk over them. You're like, dude, yes, there's a drive-through time. Yes, we're competitive. You want to have the best drive-through time in the district. But now ain't the time.
Yeah.
We'll worry about that one is right. Right now, let's get the orders correct. Let's slow things down. Where's the order? Let's get through that order first and slow things down by taking it step by step. That was my method. Then even before my diagnosis was, I guess, because something I learned about DID is that we really are compassionate individuals. We are caring.
Interesting.
Because we learned to sort of put others' feelings before ours. That's what we had to say. We had to stop abandoning ourselves because we were putting others before ours. But it's also what allowed me to be a better leader. Now, I was a compassionate leader, but I was also competitive as fuck. Because I said, we have other parts. And so we want to be on top. We want to be the number one in our group. We want to, our district. There's a reason why I became a district manager for a high-end client business.
That speaks a lot, because you're really opening up the doors for people who maybe haven't had this discussion before or heard this discussion, or the video that you're gonna copy and paste into the private. And I say that because I JD here, JD 10141 made 2 comments here. Interesting. I think you're really touching a great deal of people within this same, almost 400 people still. We're at an hour and 20 minutes right now. That went by already pretty fast, didn't it? I just looked up and I went, holy cow, that flew by. But JD says, I'm working on it. Okay. Blank statement, but obviously this subject. And then he follows it up with, hello from the capital of Charlie Brown. So I think he's, if you remember the Charlie Brown commercials, Charlie Brown was always a character, right? So I have a feeling that you're having an effect, and I have a feeling your email is going to be tapped a number of times here. Lynn Sock says, how do you define, and as you do this, let's go ahead and roll into a closing statement, and a wave goodbye, and I'll put you back in the green room, and I'll finish out the monologue at the end. It's 90 seconds or something, and then I'll come and chat with you in the green room. Why don't you answer that? I'm going to copy and paste this video over. Folks, let's check out this video. Mike's mentioned this a number of times now during the episode, so I have a feeling it's going to be a really important one. Mike, why don't you take this and then roll into a closing statement, and we'll wrap up and be out of here in the next 15 minutes or so.
I'm sorry, Rod. I wasn't paying attention. I'll be honest. I was trying to get that video ready for you on the chat. I also
so you got it there. I'm just saying, go ahead. Well, say what you're going to say in a second, but just to carry on after you say what you're also going to put on. But how do you define resilience after everything you've experienced? Great question to me. And then use that as to roll into a closing statement. I'll put you in the green room and I'll hook up with you after I do the last 90-second monologue or whatever.
Define resilience. I define
after everything you've gone through, because there's resilience in your life.
Yeah. So I define resilience by having empathy for myself, understanding that what happened to me wasn't my fault. And my mind splitting, it split because it wanted and worth protecting. It's really hard to define resilience because every day, at the end of the day, I give myself a pat on the back and I give myself a big hug. Not because I changed, but because I was willing to stay with whatever I was dealing with at the time. I gave myself permission to understand that this dissociative identity disorder is not brokenness and is not something to be shameful about. It's something to be proudful about because it was my mind adapting to protect me. And I'm proud that my system protected me because it allowed me to be here for my boys today. And something that I take with me every day that coach taught me is that the version of you that wakes up is stronger than the version of you who fell asleep.
God, I love that. That is beautiful. Real quick question before you give a big wave goodbye. Rory Tater here, Elo Gizer. Does that mean anything to you?
No.
Now, I assume there's somebody that they were referring to. If you would, Rory, if you would hit me back on that, and maybe we can. I assume you were talking about a video or somebody who speaks on this topic. That's my guess, right? That's what I would think. In the meantime, my friend Mike, give everybody a big wave. Everybody is still freaking here and just loving what you're all about. And I've got all the contact information. If you see here, all these are correct, right? There's the YouTube you were talking about. Here's your Gmail account for emailing.
Yes.
And then here's your YouTube, Healing with Courage, correct?
Yeah. The last link that I put on there is a
IG?
The Healing with Courage kit.
Oh, this one. This one.
Yeah, that one is a free grounding guide for anyone who's still in that shame or still a guilt that doesn't want to do therapy or is a little afraid. This is something you can do at home safely. There's some safe vocabulary in it, so no triggering, but it allows you to have something. And I created this because I found that there's a lot of people that don't have benefits, that don't have money for therapy, but they still deserve something.
Yeah.
So I created that for that purpose.
Beautiful, man. Give everybody a big wave. I'm going to wrap it up and I'll join you out here in the green room here in a second. Okay. All right, brother. Yeah. Great episode, folks. I appreciate you really diving in, and you guys are really starting to get a little funny too. I mean, you always ask great questions, and then every once in a while you throw me a zinger. I really love how you guys are opening up more and more each and every day, each and every conversation. We're growing together, and we're learning things that we need to learn. So, as we close, I want to bring this back to you guys, the listeners that I'm talking about right now, the viewer, the parent, the leader on the other side of this conversation. What Mike Cuevas shared today wasn't about labels. It was about permission, right? We talked about that time in and time out. It's about permission to stop fighting yourself, permission to understand that adaptation is intelligence, permission to choose calm over chaos, especially in the roles that matter most. So, you know what? If today resonated, it's likely because you've had to adapt too. And here's the truth we don't say often enough. Understanding is the first step towards agency. That's why we do this show, folks. You know that. That's why we do it live, as a matter of fact. And that's why we invite voices like Mike Cuevas into this space. If this conversation added value, there are a few simple ways you can support and extend that value. First, subscribe to this channel like Mike did earlier. This YouTube channel at Rodd Duff 1939. It helps these conversations reach people who need them but don't know where to look yet. Second, join our Substack, insightstraighttalk.substack.com. Insights and Straight Talk. So it's just all together, insightstraighttalk.substack.com. So the Substack, 3 days a week. Monday is Barbieisms. Wednesday is pages and poems. And Friday is, which I'll talk about in a second, is Behind the Mic. In Behind the Mic, we do deeper reflections, and that content that doesn't fit neatly into algorithms. So we do it there. And if you're an entrepreneur, a business or a business person, or an organization aligned with human-centered leadership and education, we do have some only limited left sponsorship opportunities currently open. We kind of keep those very limited because we don't want to get too much and then distort the story. We want this hour and a half to be spent with you, in going through the things that the great middle class need to be empowered, or subjects they may be bothered by. So we do have some opening sponsorships available, a couple. You're in that you're not buying airtime. You're supporting dialogue that actually changes how people think and how they show up. You can also check out my weekly column once a week, every Friday, in the Mangum Star News. It's always at the top half of the second page. I take up that second page. And that's where these conversations continue locally. And finally, share this episode. Share it with someone who needs language for what they're carrying, because conversations like this don't spread through outrage, right? They spread through trust. Thank you, Mike Cuevas, for the courage, for the clarity, for everything you brought today. Thank you, Mangum City Library. Thank you, Leaf Labs and Voices at the Table, for believing in the long game. And thank you for being here, for being part of Insights and Straight Talk. We'll see you next time. My name is Rodd Duff. I'm your host. Check out my little comment at the end of the outro. But with that said, I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.